After trying so hard to find a wonderful tutorial out there for how to frost a smooth cake and not being able to find one, I made my own. Hi, I'm Lindsay from Life, Love, and Sugar, and I'm here to show you how to frost a perfectly smooth cake with buttercream. When I first started frosting cakes, I really wanted to know that I had crisp corners, smooth edges, and there just really wasn't a great tutorial out there to show you exactly how to do that. So I'm going to show you how to do that today with my tutorial because I know it's going to give you the perfect cake. To get started, you want to go ahead and have your cake that has a nice crumb coat on it and some frosting. We've got a vanilla American buttercream here, which is what we're going to use to frost our cake. And the first thing we're going to do is frost the top of the cake. I like to use a 1 cup measuring cup to grab my frosting because I generally think that's a good amount of frosting for the top of the cake. And I like to use a 9-inch spatula. And we're just going to smooth this frosting out around the top of the cake. And as you're working, be sure to push it off towards the edges. We're going to get the top of this as smooth as we can. We're going to end up having to smooth it again later, but it's always nice to have a smooth base to start with. We're going to take our Wilton tip 789, it's an icing tip, put that in our large icing bag. Go ahead and fill it up really as much as you can because you're going to need a lot of frosting. Try to apply even pressure as you work your way around the cake. We're going to start at the bottom and work our way up to the top. It's really helpful to have a turntable for this step so that you can kind of hold your icing bag steady and turn the cake on the turntable. And you can add as much frosting as you need. You may need multiple layers for a taller cake. You may need fewer for a shorter cake, just whatever you need. I like to make sure to add one more layer here. The reason for that is we want to have a lip of frosting that sticks above the top edge of that cake. We're going to use that to give us nice sharp corners, and if we don't have plenty of frosting there, we're going to have trouble with that. Now that our frosting is on the sides of the cake, we want to take our icing smoother. This is an Ateco brand, and I actually find that this one really is the best. I really like to rest the bottom of this on my cardboard cake circle as flat as I can so I know I'm getting a straight edge. The other thing to keep in mind with this is the angle. I like to do about a 20 to 30 degree angle as I'm frosting this. I also think that actually helps make a much smoother side there, and it actually helps smooth out some of the air pockets that you can get in your frosting. I would say this is about medium pressure. You want to make sure you're kind of digging into this frosting a little bit. We're actually removing a good bit of the frosting that we added, but it gives us a chance to fill in any gaps from where the frosting was added. So you can see here, there's some little open areas and even some of these little air pockets. We're going to continue pulling frosting around so that we can fill all these gaps in. Now if you notice that for the most part, you've got full coverage, but there's just some small areas down here that are open. You can definitely go back with your offset spatula or even with your piping tip and add frosting where you need to. You don't necessarily have to put frosting everywhere because as we pull frosting around again, it'll fill in some of the gaps. Just get enough around there that you'll be able to kind of pull it around and work with it. So now we're going to keep smoothing the side of our cake, pulling that frosting around, getting those gaps filled in. Tighter that angle is, the better you're going to actually smooth those over. The next thing we're going to work on is the corners. This is actually where it's kind of a make or break with your smooth cake. The better the corners, the better it looks. Let's take our offset spatula. I like to make sure it's nice and clean before I start. Carefully bring this frosting in, and you want to try and get right level with this cake. So try and keep an eye on where the level of the cake is. So it's a tight angle, and we're going to work from the outside in. Get rid of that frosting, and every couple pulls, you want to clean this thing off and make sure it's nice and smooth and ready to go. And this is where, as I mentioned before when we were adding the frosting to the sides, where it's important to have the frosting up above the edge. Because if we didn't have this raised up above the edge, we'd actually end up with gaps here, and so you wouldn't get as nice of a corner. You want to apply some pressure to the outside here so that you're working the air pockets out and smoothing things out, but you don't want to push down so hard that the frosting here slides down. So keep that in mind. So now at this point I like to kind of give it a look and make sure the sides are even and the way I'd like for them to be, straight up and down, because you can still go back and fix any imperfections at this point if you see them. All right, we're looking pretty solid. I like to remove excess frosting that's left around the base of the cake, and I like to use my offset spatula to do that. So once that's done, we're ready for our secret trick. Paper towels. You definitely want to make sure that you have a smooth paper towel. The Viva brand is the only one I've ever found that is smooth like this. This actually has one side that's a little bit bumpier than the other, so we want to make sure we're working with the smooth side. Just set that right on top. This is where you're going to use your fondant smoother. Even though we're not working with fondant, we're using this to make it nice and smooth. So we're going to start here applying kind of a light to medium pressure. Not putting too much pressure on the edges, but trying to work out some of the imperfections that might still be in the cake. See how it's looking. Keep going as you need to. Run this along here. It's a little easier to control pressure with your fingers sometimes and have it only in one or two spots rather than the whole size of your smoother. And then the next thing we're going to do is the sides. We're just working our way up and down with the fondant smoother, using the paper towel, making sure we're going straight up and down so we keep those nice straight sides. Same with the corners, okay? If we want those perfectly sharp corners, we can take this and we can kind of work our smoother, our hands, and go around and actually shape these. We can touch the cake and kind of push the frosting together a little bit as we go, and that'll allow us to get some sharp corners here. Now you can really keep going with this as much as you want to. This frosting, if you're using my American buttercream, it is a crusting buttercream. So make sure you're happy with the sides before you move on from this to this. So once you're ready to move on with decorating your cake, grab your piping bag and your piping tip. We're actually using the Ateco 844 piping tip. It's a closed star tip that I like. It's nice and large, and it'll give you a nice swirl on top of your cake. I like to start sort of towards the inside of the cake. Do one rotation, another rotation, and then just kind of finish it off. Now we're going to finish off the cake with one of my favorite things, sprinkles. A good sprinkle mix goes a long way on a cake like this. Just be ready for them to go everywhere. So there you have it. There's my smooth frosting tutorial. I hope you found it helpful. For the full tutorial and video, please visit lifeloveandsugar.com.